Snow fell gently over the quiet street, soft flakes drifting down like fragments of forgotten memories. The world seemed still, painted in shades of white and gray, as if time itself had paused to listen to the whisper of the wind. Inside a small café at the corner of the street, a woman sat by the frosted window, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. Every so often she looked up whenever the door opened, hoping, praying, that maybe this time it would be him. But each time, it wasn't. And each time, her heart sank just a little deeper into the silence of waiting. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and love finding its way back even after being lost in time, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. It truly helps keep these heart-touching stories alive. It had been 3 years since Clara last saw Daniel. 3 long, empty winters where she'd walked past this cafe more times than she could count, only to stop herself from going in. It wasn't pride that kept her away. It was pain. Because this cafe wasn't just any place. It was where she and Daniel had met every morning for years, where they laughed, fought, and dreamed together before life slowly pulled them apart. He was a kind man, always putting others before himself, but sometimes kindness comes with a cost. When his father fell ill, Daniel had left the city to care for him, promising Clara that distance wouldn't change what they had. But time is cruel. Messages became fewer, calls stopped, and the silence between them grew so wide that not even love seemed to echo anymore. Clara never stopped loving him, though. Every year she'd come back to this cafe on the same date, the day he'd first held her hand in the falling snow. She told herself it was just to remember, but deep down it was hope, quiet, desperate hope, that somehow fate would give her one last glimpse of him. That evening, as the city lights flickered on, she sat by the window once again. Her reflection stared back at her, tired eyes, a soft smile that didn't reach her heart. The waiter, a gentle young man who had seen her there before, walked up to her table. "You've been here a long time, miss," he said softly. "Would you like a refill before we close?" Clara shook her head with a faint smile. "No, thank you. I should probably get going." But she didn't move, not yet. Something inside her made her stay. Outside, the snow thickened, footsteps crunched along the sidewalk, and a small family walked by. A man, a little girl in a purple coat, and a woman with kind eyes. Clara watched them through the glass, and something about the man made her breath catch. The way he walked, the way he turned to smile at his daughter. It was him. Daniel. Older, perhaps, and tired in a way that life makes a person tired, but still him. The man she had loved. The man she had waited for through seasons of silence. Her heart pounded so loud she could hear it over the soft hum of the cafe's closing music. She wanted to rush out, call his name, tell him she had never stopped waiting, but fear rooted her in place. What if he'd moved on? What if the woman beside him was his wife, and that little girl was his child? What if she was nothing more than a forgotten chapter in his story? She watched as they passed by, snowflakes melting on their coats. The little girl tugged at his hand, pointing at something through the glass. Clara froze when she realized the child was pointing at her. "Daddy, that's the lady who said she missed you," the little girl said with innocent excitement. Daniel stopped, his breath caught, visible in the cold air as if his whole world had just stopped turning. The woman beside him turned, curious, but Daniel was already staring through the cafe window, right at Clara. Inside, Clara felt the ground slip from beneath her heart. She hadn't spoken to anyone about him, certainly not to a child, yet the recognition in the girl's words felt too perfect, too impossible. And then it hit her. A week ago, Clara had helped a little girl who had dropped her stuffed toy near the cafe. She'd knelt, smiled, and said softly, "You remind me of someone I miss very much." The child had smiled, thanked her, and run off before Clara could ask her name. That little girl was Daniel's daughter. Daniel slowly let go of his wife's arm and stepped closer to the window. Their eyes met, separated only by glass and years of unspoken words. In that single moment, the cafe, the snow, the entire city fell away. It was just them. 2 hearts that had once beaten in rhythm, now trembling with the shock of recognition. He opened the cafe door hesitantly, almost afraid she might vanish if he moved too quickly. Clara rose from her seat, her hands trembling. Daniel's voice, quiet but certain, broke the silence. Clara! It wasn't a question. It was a memory spoken aloud. They stood there for what felt like forever. The woman beside Daniel smiled gently and placed a hand on his shoulder. You should talk to her, she whispered, and then, with understanding in her eyes, she took the little girl's hand and walked a few steps ahead, giving them space only love could justify. Daniel's eyes glistened. You waited, he said softly. Clara nodded. Every year, every winter. He swallowed hard, his voice breaking. I didn't forget. My father was sick for so long, and when he passed, I wanted to come back, but I thought you'd moved on. Tears welled in her eyes. How could I, she whispered. You were my home. They sat down at the same table she had occupied all those years. The waiter, sensing something sacred, quietly placed 2 warm cups of coffee in front of them without a word. Outside, Daniel's daughter waved at them through the window, her face bright with happiness. Clara smiled through tears. She's beautiful, she said. Daniel nodded, his gaze softening. She has her mother's heart. My wife. She passed away 2 years ago. The words hung heavy in the air. Clara reached for his hand, not in pity, but in a silent promise that she still cared. I'm sorry, she said. He smiled faintly. You don't need to be. Life has strange ways of teaching us what love really means. They talked for hours, about the past, the things they'd lost, and the ways they'd both changed. The café grew quieter, chairs were stacked, lights dimmed. Finally, the waiter approached, holding a soft smile. We're closing, he said kindly. Clara nodded, preparing to leave, but Daniel didn't move. He looked at her, his hands still around hers. Do you mind if I stay a little longer? He asked the waiter. The young man hesitated, then smiled knowingly. I'll lock up when you're done. As the door closed behind him, Daniel reached for the apron he'd been wearing. Clara blinked in surprise. He untied it slowly, placing it on the counter. I work here, he said quietly. After my wife passed, I needed a new start. This café, it reminded me of you. Clara's heart nearly broke. All this time, she whispered, you were here. He nodded. Every evening I'd watch the door and hope you'd walk in. I didn't know you already were. They both laughed softly through tears, the sound fragile yet full of life. Outside, the snow danced beneath the streetlights, the world peaceful again. When the last light in the cafe flickered, Daniel reached across the table, his eyes shining with something pure and steady. Maybe we can start again, he said. Not from where we left off, but from where we are now. Clara smiled, a smile that carried years of waiting, heartbreak, and quiet strength. I'd like that, she whispered. They stepped out into the night together, walking side by side through the softly falling snow. The little girl ran up to them, her tiny hand slipping into Clara's as if it belonged there all along. Daniel watched, his heart finally at rest. For the first time in years, he felt whole again, not because he'd found what he lost, but because love had found its way back. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. It helps us continue bringing real, heartfelt stories that remind us of the beauty of love, forgiveness, and second chances. Before you go, tell us in the comments, do you believe that true love always finds its way back, no matter how much time has passed? As they disappeared into the gentle snowfall, hand in hand, the world seemed to breathe again. Some stories don't end. They simply begin again, in the quietest corners of winter, where love never really left. It just waited to be found.